Hello, and welcome to Backyard Adventures TV and Drone Genesis. I am your host, Phil Scott, and today my guest on Backyard Adventures TV, Drone Genesis, is automotive journalist Amanda Cline. So, Amanda, thank you so much for agreeing to be on the show today. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
So, today we're going to talk about automotive topics. We're going to get a little bit into Amanda's background, and we're going to go from there. So, viewers out there, I hope you enjoy the content. And without further ado, here we go. So first, I want to ask you a little bit about your background. First of all, where were you born, and where did you go to college?
I was born in Fort Myers, Florida, so Southwest Florida. A lot of people have grandparents in the area if they know of the area. And I went to UCF in Orlando.
And what did you major in at UCF?
My bachelor's is in English literature, and then my master's is in technical communication, which is like business writing and stuff like that, something along those lines.
So we're fellow English majors. I majored in English at San Diego State too for my
Oh, very
bachelor's.
cool.
So
That's
yeah,
awesome.
yeah. I love to write actually. And that's what made me want to be an English major. So what attracted you to writing and journalism, Amanda?
I am not good at math, not great at science,
Me
and
neither.
you can only be good at one, I feel like.
Yes.
But I actually had a really great professor when I started school, and her name was Jill Hummel, and she was like my best teacher, and she gave me so much advice, and she was so helpful. And I was like, oh my gosh, I actually might be good at this. So I kind of took a bunch of English classes after that, and then I decided to go for English Lit after that.
Now, what attracted you to just journalism? And how did you get yourself into the field of writing about cars?
I just really I find that writing is like kind of easy for me. I guess it just kind of comes easily. And I've always been into cars. My family has always kind of been into cars. My boyfriend and I met at a car meet. So we do like a lot of car stuff together. But since I have always grown up around cars, that was kind of also effortless. So it was like, okay, I may as well do the two things that I know the most about, I guess.
And you're into racing as well, right? Your
Yeah,
interest in racing?
I'm not a racer, but I watch it. I do. We've gone to the F1 races a few times, went to the Miami one, and then
Mhm.
we just went to our first Indy race out in Nashville, and that was
Oh,
really fun.
wow. What
Yeah,
was that like?
it was fun. You know, it's like it's a lot more low key than F1, and it's more like about the racing because the Miami F1 race is so like celebrity and like fashion. And so the IndyCar race was fun. It was like people that like racing all in one place, and it was just a little more relaxed.
All right. Well, tell me about your favorite cars to write about because I've seen some of the vehicles you've written about. And you've written about a variety of cars. It seems like mostly SUVs, but what are your favorite cars to write about?
So I'm technically on the SUV team at Motor Biscuit, but I really love Toyotas.
Hmm.
My first car was a Lexus IS, so I've always been into like the Toyota Lexus genre, but
Hmm.
I really love the Toyota SUVs. They sent me the Sequoia TRD Pro, and that was like the coolest thing
Oh,
to drive.
wow.
It was really cool, and it was bright orange, which is my favorite color. So I love driving that. I got to drive the Highlander and the 4Runner, which were also both really cool. But I do love Toyotas, and I love Toyota SUVs specifically.
Hmm. What brand do you see as I know you love Toyotas and I like Toyotas and Hondas. What brand like Kia, for instance, how do you feel about because I know you've tested the Telluride as well, right?
I haven't, but I got to sit in it at the Miami Auto Show,
Hmm.
and I've written about it extensively. What I like about Kia and their SUVs is that they make like safety and features so much more accessible, where like you can still get the base level trim and you can still have all the important safety features, whereas a lot of brands want you to get like the platinum or the top of the line trim. and you kind of have to pay for that. So I like Kia and how accessible they make everything for people.
Yeah, they do, and they've come along so far in just quality, than say what they were 10, 20 years ago, even because before they were just considered junky cars, cheap cars that very few people bought. But the longer they hung with it, their quality improved, and now they're building some fantastic vehicles.
Yeah,
Same with
that are
Hyundai.
yeah, and the new Hyundai, I wrote it down. I think it's is it the Santa Fe, the new one that just got like redone for 2024? They looked so good. You think
Yes.
that they're a luxury vehicle, and even when you're in it, you kind of feel that way, which is nice. Again, like you don't have to pay the luxury price to kind of have that experience and have all those features.
Hmm. Now, electric cars have really come on the scene, especially the last 5 years or so. Um, but there are other alternative means that could come along. Do you think it's wise that the automotive industry is going just full bore into electric cars? Or do you think there's room for another alternative fuel to come along in the future?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see why not, why there couldn't be another option. I think that we almost did things backwards with the like, okay, now everyone has to have an EV, but we don't have the infrastructure. We don't have chargers in the middle of North Dakota. We don't have chargers in a lot of places. And the Tesla, is it the Magic Dock ones that they've been working on? There's like five of them in New York, and that's it. So like we can't force everyone to have electric vehicles and then not have a way to charge it. Like it doesn't seem like everyone is going to be able to hop on board with that.
Yeah, and I agree with you that it has been backwards. Like, for instance, out here in California, you see Teslas every day. I mean, they're commonplace out here. Whereas I've heard people talk about being in New York and rarely ever seeing a Tesla or any kind of electric car. Um, it just seems like, especially I know Ford's had issues selling F-150s and the Mustang Mach-E's. People aren't buying them because there are all the infrastructure issues and the other things that people didn't anticipate on who bought these vehicles. So it seems like it's been awfully problematic out here. Like I said, you see them out here a lot. Um, but again, I personally would not buy one at this point because range, I can get into my little car and drive 300 miles and not have to fill up again and then fill it up really quickly and then be on my way. You've got to stop and charge your electric vehicle and wait for it to get enough of a charge before you can set out on your trip again. And you've got to plan your whole trip around charging your vehicle. And what if there are not chargers around? Were you
And then
in
you're
a place?
stuck.
Yeah, you're stuck, and it's just a huge issue right now. And I think buyers are catching on to that too. And so it seems like electrical vehicle sales have kind of stalled out this year. So yeah, I just see electric vehicles right now being problematic. And one other thing that I find interesting too is, okay, where does all the materials for the batteries come from? Well, a lot of it comes from China. Okay. So if we're not if we're not having the lithium and all the technology that we need to put, the minerals that we need to use for EVs, electric batteries, then what are we going to do? How are we going to get that? So it just, that's been one of my pet peeves. It's just like, yeah, I think electric vehicles are exciting. They have some really awesome ones. The Lucids, those are awesome cars.
Yeah.
But at some point, if the infrastructure is not there and it's not going to be there anytime soon, it would seem to me that manufacturers would have to dial it back some and just kind of step on the brakes and say, wait a minute, is this the right choice? I know Toyota seemed to be slow with adopting it, which was smart to me, because they've been working on it. That's it. They had what, the Toyota Mirage, I think, the Mirai, whatever it is, but it was a
Mirai. Yeah,
Mirai.
that's the hydrogen one, right?
Yes. So they've been working on alternative fuels and propulsion systems, which was smart. And they pretty much revolutionized hybrids with the Prius. And again,
Hmm.
I mean, that was smart because they didn't just say, okay, we're just going to go with an electric car. they had hybrids where you're still using gasoline to get you where you need to go. You do have that certain range of electric that you can go, but
Yeah.
then you have the gasoline engine that'll kick in
Hmm.
regardless. So Toyota's been, to me, the smartest manufacturer in terms of pushing on that technology, but not getting too headlong into it.
Yeah.
So they've been the smart, and that's why they sell so many vehicles. They're well run, and so there you go. So another question that I wanted to ask you about is the strike between the UAW and the big three. Do you see, in your opinion, do you see any end to that anytime soon?
I just think it's kind of terrible on both ends because obviously I think people deserve more money for the work that they're doing, but I can ultimately see that just getting passed on to consumers down the line because they're going to be like, "Oh, well, we're paying them more, so now they cost more." And I just feel like the prices of everything are so high already. Like how much more can we pay for a vehicle? And it's not the worker's fault, so it's like I think they should be paid more at the end of the day.
Right.
I see that being pushed on the workers and them having to take the blame for it when 2 years down the line they're like, "Oh, we're raising prices again." And that isn't ideal for anyone really.
No. And one thing about that too is you've got to be able to make sure that the workers are taken care of in terms of them getting the pay that they're due. But there's something else that the workers have to worry about, and it's robots, things becoming robotic. How are they? What if they're replaced, and where do they go from there? So I can see why they're stressed out and while they're wanting to get more pay and such. It's just a sticky situation on both sides, and hopefully they will come to some kind of a resolution. But ultimately, whatever happens, the consumer is going to end up paying more for vehicles. They're paying more for vehicles anyway. It's just this amazing to see how they've skyrocketed, yeah, especially used cars.
My gosh.
It's insane to see the prices of these old, even early 2000s vehicles like SUVs and stuff, because I research those all the time, and you could easily spend 10 grand or more on like a 2006 Honda CRV, something
Yep.
that old. But yeah, they have relatively low miles, but still, that's a lot of money for, what is it, like now, almost a 17-year-old car?
Yeah. With like no technology, like none of forward collision warning and all of that stuff wasn't on there. Do you ever look at IC cars? They like put out research and stuff.
No,
Have you
I've
heard of
no,
them?
no, tell me about it.
I'll send you the study that they just put out, but they put out a study that said used car shoppers have to pay almost twice as much now for the same car as they
Wow.
would have like pre-pandemic. So in 2019, you could have bought a 3-year-old used car for 23 grand,
Mhm.
but this year that wouldn't even buy you a 6-year-old car. And that's
Wow.
terrible. Like that because we're moving so quickly with technology and stuff that even going back to a 6-year-old car, you're missing out on so much of that tech that makes you safer, that makes the roads safer. And that is just like, it just feels irresponsible.
It is. It is. And the cheapest cars in the US, I saw some kind of YouTube video on the cheapest cars. It's like the Nissan Versa, and I think they're killing off the Mitsubishi Mirage. That's a terrible little car. I'm sorry, that car, it's terrible.
They're so
Terrible.
small. They're
And
so
no power.
small. Mm-mm. And no
Just
safety. Like you can put all of the systems on that you want, but if like a semi truck is coming at you, there's just no chance. Even like
no.
a suburban, I mean, they're just too small and they're
Yeah.
just not safe, and that's not fair.
Yeah. So when the cheapest cars that are affordable are just cheapy little small cars. That's a big segment of the population that's really going to be paying much more for a car that, let's just say, 5, 10 years ago, 20 grand would have gotten you probably a mid-size car, would have gotten you a smaller SUV.
Hmm.
Not anymore. It's not going to do that. I think the cheapest SUV that I've seen has been like the Chevy Equinox, something like that. It's like 23 grand, something like that. But the more you get on a vehicle, yeah, the Ford Mavericks was supposed to start at about 19, 20 grand. But when you start, I mean, and when you start getting all the options and such on the vehicle, 25, 26, $30,000. So it's just a shame that cars have to be so unaffordable for so many people. But again, that's why dealers are able to charge so much more for older used cars. And like you said, they're not getting the technology that new car buyers would get or newer car buyers would get.
And that ultimately keeps like everyone safer on the roads. It makes your car safer, it makes other people safer, it makes the roads safer. So it's like to be putting people in these old cars because it's all they can afford and just expecting like traffic deaths and stuff like that to go down. It's just not going to happen.
Right.
So that I wish that there was a way to fix that.
Yes, I agree. Now, are there any vehicles that you're looking forward to, new vehicles that are coming up for the new model year?
I hate to sound like a broken record, but I'm really excited about the new Land Cruiser. I think it's going to be so cool. I'm really hoping that there is a new Forerunner at some point. I'm excited for
Yeah.
that future vehicle. And then the new Lexus GX and the TX, I think is really cool. That's the new like 3-row SUV that they have.
Hmm.
We got to see it at the Miami Auto Show, and I'm excited to see that one. It's like a totally new vehicle, so it'll be nice to see that in the Lexus lineup.
Yeah, I always try to get out to the LA Auto Show every year. So I'm going again this year. I mean, that's one of the big ones.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to going out there. Last year it was like the first year that they really ramped up post pandemic. So it was interesting to see people back in there. And I mean, it kind of reminded me of the way it used to be before the pandemic.
Yeah.
And so I'm really excited to go to LA in November to the LA Auto Show. What advice, Amanda, would you give a young girl who is thinking about being a writer and getting into journalism?
Man, I would tell them to find a good teacher and pay attention in that class. But really, like, if you are in college and that is your goal, try to take all of those classes and find which ones you don't like, because I can't write a poem to save my life. Like, creative writing isn't really my thing, but I figured that out pretty early. So I think that if you want to do it, you can kind of find out what you're good at and just kind of hone in on that. And I went to community college for a little while, and I thought that that was really helpful because it let me kind of get rid of some classes that I didn't necessarily want to go that route. So I got to take creative writing and I got to take all of the stuff that I wasn't really too big on. And then I could move on and I could take like the higher level classes once I got to UCF and do that stuff that was a little more like specific.
Mhm.
So I think that that was really helpful for me. And freelancing isn't the best, it isn't the right move for everyone, but you can freelance and you can kind of see if you like a publication or see if that's the kind of writing you like. If you're more newsy and you're into the breaking news stuff, you can kind of figure that out. So freelancing is a good way to figure it out without getting too committed to anything.
Okay, and finally, what would you tell your younger self now about what you've learned basically by just finding a career and just letting things fall into place? What would you tell your younger self?
My gosh, I would probably say it's okay that they call you the weird car girl. It's fine. Don't worry
Uh,
about it too much because
oh, they
now these
actually
same
called you
people.
that? Oh my
Oh
gosh.
yeah. Oh my gosh. My IS 300 was like I like spray painted the wheels. I mean, it wasn't like a shining example of a first car,
Mhm.
but I got made fun of for it because nobody cared that I was into cars. But now people ask me all the time for like what SUV they should get or like what brand they should look for. And I'm like, I will help you.
Wow.
I have the answers, hopefully.
So it came full circle. So they ended up asking you for advice. And so
Even my
I
mom.
oh, you're wrong too. Wow. So you know what? I think that's awesome that you found your calling, something that you love to do, and you're doing it. I think people too often get caught into a career that they don't like, and they spend 10, 20, 30 years not liking what they do. Or had they just maybe taken a step back earlier and said, you know what? I really like doing this other thing. I should be doing that instead. So not a lot of people are lucky enough to find their passion and be able to do things that are in their passion. So kudos to you, Amanda, for doing that. That's awesome.
Thank you. I feel really lucky that I get to do it. And like, I'm writing a review on the Maserati MC20 right now that they let me drive.
Mhm.
And my friend was like, "Oh, aren't you upset that you have to work on the weekend?" And I was like, "Not really, because like it's fun. I got to drive a Maserati and like I get to podcast. I mean, it's not really work when you're like having fun doing it. So
Mhm.
it's not so bad."
Oh, that's awesome. Wow. Well, Amanda, thank you so much for taking the time to do the podcast today and to do the Backyard Adventures TV episode. So thank you so much, Amanda. I really appreciate it. It's been an honor to have you on, and I'd love to have you on again in the future.
Thank you for having me. I would love to be back on in the future. Maybe we can talk about the Forerunner if it ever comes out.
Yes, yes, they've been making this one for a while now, and I've had a chance to drive it a few times. Love it, but yeah, you're right. It's time for an update. It's overdue. So
It
yes. So thank you, Amanda. Thank you so very much.
Of course. Thank you again for having me.
You're welcome. If you like the content on this channel, please like it and subscribe.